And that tinkering section session mainly led to this talk. So I hope you'll enjoy it because it was a pleasure to find that out and to write it. So here we are. Who this talk is for? Um, Basically, the if you write online, this can help you. This can be valuable to you. But mainly, it is for people who are content managers at any company. Like companies use Ghost for their blogs very often. If you own your own newsletter, like if you have a Substack or and you're planning to move out of it into Ghost, for example, or if you're just a blogger, like a lot of blogs run on Ghost very successfully. And if you're a webmaster, it's you can learn something new as well as a pattern that is becoming very common. Cool. So if you read online, you probably bumped into Ghost. Like Ghost is a CMS. It's so far it is small. It's a niche CMS. It's not a big CMS like WordPress, but it is grabbing a lot of attention, and especially from companies and people who are focused on performance. Ghost is used by at least these companies. So like if you go to Mozilla, DuckDuckGo, and Revolut, their blogs, they're all powered by Ghost. And the interesting thing about it is that all of them are either self-hosted, but they're all open source. Signal, Quillette, and the browser, they're also publications that run fully. Their whole business runs on Ghost. But why is that? Mainly, Ghost is open source and self-hosted, so a lot of companies like that. So they like to control the infrastructure they run on and to have sovereignty about their full data and not have it with someone else. It is also one of the breed of headless CMSs. So companies use it so they can provide the same content in both web and mobile, like without having much trouble with it, because the headless CMS mainly turns the CMS into an API for content, and it is fast. And rumor has it that it's very good for SEO. So that usually gets a lot of people excited about using Ghost. But what is the catch? Well, there's no big catch, but the thing is, the analytics that Ghost provides out of the box is very weak, and expectedly so, because this is a CMS. It's not an analytics system. And basically, what you get is just basic page views, like aggregate page views, and some details about open rates and who clicks what and things like that. But it's nothing comprehensive. That is why Matomo is a great complement to Ghost and why we are discussing this here. So let's take your Ghost website or newsletter to the next level by leveraging analytics. By linking Ghost, so the if you're familiar with Matomo, you're probably familiar with this page. This is the visitor profile where you can see each user of yours and the actions they took on the website. So for this talk, we're going to use one example and we're going to focus only on identifying this user through Ghost. So you can go from here to here. And the same pattern to do this, you can do with other things like the plans and custom dimensions and things like that that you would have in Ghost in the same form. And you can transpose it back into the tag manager and then into Matomo Analytics. So for this talk, this will be a very hands-on talk. So essentially, I'm just using the slides here to guide me, but we're gonna move out of the slides very soon, and we're gonna go into Ghost, into um, text editor, and so on. For this, you will need a Ghost instance where you have admin access because you're gonna need to edit a lot of the settings of the website, including the theme. You're going to need a Matomo Tag Manager container, which I have open here, and I'm going to show you in a second. Matomo Analytics, this is also, it's optional, but it will serve the purpose of illustrating what we built today. And lastly, a text editor. Or if you're not that familiar with coding or your JavaScript skills are very low, you can ask ChatGPT and Bard for help. because we're going to do some very basic coding here, but you can basically copy the code that I'm providing without much hassle. All right. Knowing Tag Manager does help, but it's not required. This is how it works. By default, Ghost does not expose any of the user data to the front end to prevent it from being scraped by other scripts that people might install on their websites, or by extensions that users might have when they're loading the website. So our first step will be to expose the user data in a controlled way so we can catch it in the data layer, our own data layer, and then pass it on to the Matomo Analytics suite or to any other analytics that we want to run on top of this. So let's go. This is our plan. It has 4 steps. Now I'm gonna just get back to the slide just to mark each step. But essentially, we are off to the races in hands-on activity. So take notes, and later this is recorded as well, so later you can go at your own pace. So our first step will be to create the variables in the tag manager. Then number 2 is the one I want you to take away from this talk, because this is the one that is really valuable. We will prepare the data for the variable in Ghost and implement it. And then third, we're going to load the tag manager in Ghost with the variables loaded. And fourth, we're going to show how that worked. All right. So tag manager, I'm going to now switch the screen to the tag manager. If you ever used the Matomo tag manager, it looks like this. Like essentially you get to the getting started page, and then you see your tags, your triggers, versions, and all that. For this, we're going to create variables. So we go here. The one we're interested in is user email. I'm going to show you how to create it. So essentially, you click on that button, and then you create a data layer variable. And that pretty much takes you to this page. This page, you have the type, data layer, a name, like DL for data layer, and then user email. Description, it's for documentation only, like you can put it however you want. And this one is important, the data layer variable name. This will be used in one of the scripts in a subsequent step. So please make sure you get this one correct with the next steps. All right, so we created this. Now, this is the interesting part, the one about how Ghost can expose this data to the tag manager. So now we're gonna get into Ghost, into the admin panel. We're gonna go through the themes, find the themes that we have installed, download them, and then change them. Bear with me. This is a default plain vanilla Ghost instance. Like I just put one I created 3 random users here just for the sake of this test. We're going to go into this cog at the bottom. Here, we're going to go into design and branding, customize, and here we are. So here is where you can change design and so on, like can change colors, like move things around and so on. But what we are really interested in is to change the theme here at the bottom right. Then it's not here yet. We need to go into this installed at the top right. And here's where the important files are. We're going to download this. This will give us a zip file with all the source files for the theme. I have it downloaded already, which is this. So this zip file, we're going to extract it and we're going to open. Once we open, we have all of these files. Like these HBS files are what goes to, and it's just a format that exists that is called handlebars. For our purpose, we are looking for the default handlebar. The default is the handlebar that informs the creation of every single page in the website. So all the others are just modifications on top of the default. So like the author page is how does the author profile page look like, and it's on top of it. The home page, same thing. But the interesting one for us is the default because that underpins every single page there. So if we open this on a text editor, you're going to see that it is pretty much an HTML. Like it has all the telltale signs of an HTML. It has a head, it has all this stuff. Now, the things that are specific to handlebars are these. On curly brackets, you usually have like the instructions for how to render this page. Like this one, because it's the default, it is very simple. Like it just has all this stuff. So like you see, components of the footer, load them here. Body, load it here. So what we are going to do now is, because Ghost doesn't default by default expose the data of the member to the front end, we're going to first use the handlebars to get that data and expose it to the front end so the tag manager can consume it. And this script we're going to write here is simple, and we can put it anywhere as long as it's in the head of the handlebar, because it needs to load very early on when the page loads. I'm going to switch tabs because I have the script ready, and I'm going to walk you through it. So here it is. This is the same handlebar. Now at page 16, our script starts. So the script is essentially this. So what this script does is it creates this object called tracking details, initializes it empty, initializes the subscriptions also as an empty array, and by default, it says that the user is not identified, false. Now, the handlebar part is the interesting stuff here. When it is a member, then it's going to load the next part. Because we're not so interested on subscriptions, I'm going to skip this part, this for each. And this is what is interesting for us. So Ghost has these two variables that can be exposed through the handlebar, and we are going to expose them directly into this object, into these attributes of this object. So when you load the page, you would have this object, which has a member UUID, which will be initiated with the member's UUID when he's identified, with the member's UUID and their email. And of course, because now the user is identified, we need to set the flag to true. Okay, if you've gotten this far, then you need to save this file, go back to here, save it, and compress it. Once you compress it, you can now go back to Ghost and upload the file that you just compressed. Go here and just drag it. Once it is here, you can set it to active. And that means that now the Ghost website is using this theme with the new code that you just added to generate the pages, meaning the pages should have this tracking object uh, available. So now, next step, we're going to load the tag manager and inject the variables into the tag manager. So we're going to close here, close this. We go into code injection and we open this full screen. Full screen just so you can see it all. So here we have two little scripts. You can actually merge it into one, but for the sake of clarity, I decided to keep it separate. This first piece of code, you get it from the tag manager. Like we can get it now if you want. Here's the dashboard. When you have install code, this is the code you get to put in there. And below is also something you can ask ChatGPT or Bard for help with. You just prompt it to say, uh, write me a JavaScript snippet that will initialize a few variables in my data layer, in my Matomo tag manager data layer. Variable user ID, variable user is logged in, variable user email. And then here's the part that you need to do it yourself because ChatGPT won't know. The objects that you defined in the script that we installed in the previous step, you need to map them to the right place. But once that is done, you can complete it and save it. Okay. So now we have first created the variables in the tag manager. So the tag manager is expecting those values to be populated. We have exposed the user data in a controlled way to the front end. And with this step of code injection, we have just mapped the data from the front end into the tag manager. So now the data layer is populated and it has the data to be used. This is just an explanation of that. If you want, you can also see the code in the QR code. And now the final step, which is to fire the tags in Matomo. So we go back to the tag manager. We go to tags. Like I have created this one, but you can just create another one, custom HTML. It is a very simple tag. As you can see, it's a custom HTML. I called it identifier because I'm focusing solely on identifying the user with an email. And here's the code for it. Basically, just call this method and say push this variable and use this data layer variable, which you can either type it, bracket, bracket, DL, user email, or you can call it from here. This is also why we configure it in the tag manager. So saving this, and we publish it. Publish this. Oh, sorry, wrong one. We create the new version and publish. So now we go full circle. We added the variable to the tag manager here. We exposed the data from Ghost to the front end there. We linked the front end data to the tag manager. So it is available here. And we created a tag to consume that data and fire it into the Matomo Analytics tag, which we will see here. So this is the Matomo Analytics that I have set up for that. I am gonna pick this up. So this is the website that we were configuring just a minute ago. As you can see, I am not logged in. I am actually very logged out, but I'm gonna click around just to generate some random data and so on. This is a click out. Actually, this is interesting. So now we should be able to see this. This is me. So you see, this is me. I clicked on myself here. Coming soon, clicked around. All good. Now let's go to the visitor log, just so we look at it. This is the latest, the one that I created. Yeah, my computer is 1 hour behind it. Like this is 1 hour ahead. So this is the click out that I did, ghost org, and you can see that I'm not identified. But if we open here, we can see that our tracking details, they are here. And because I'm not identified, they're naturally set to false. There are no subscriptions. All good. So now we're gonna impersonate a user that is logged in just to show how it works and how it trickles down into Matomo Analytics. So back to Ghost, we're gonna go back. We're gonna go into members. And let's pretend to be Bob. This Bob has an email here, and I'm gonna get a link to impersonate him. This link is valid. Now, I'm gonna leave the console open, so we call this again. Welcome back, Bob. You have successfully logged in. I can click around and so on. Now the tracking details, moment of truth here. Everything is here. So like now I am identified. I have this member email, member UID, and of course I don't have any subscriptions attached to it, but you can add your subscriptions to it. So now that it is there, let's look at it in Matomo. This is the session that we had where I clicked out and showed you. So let's reload. And now I have a new session that I started and I'm identified here. And yep, that is me. So with this, we conclude this, and we now actually, this data, we can now start configuring all the fun things in Matomo, like goals, funnels, yeah, and start having superior insight on my usage. Like I can figure out which posts drive new subscribers, which posts convert people into paid subscribers, and things like that, which you couldn't do that without Matomo. And even with just putting Matomo there, you wouldn't be able to stitch it together very nicely. Then you can break things down also between plans and so on. So that is a pretty good add to the thing. All right, I will now look at the chat for questions. Yes, so I have one question here. You may use Matomo configuration variable to push the user ID variable instead of using the custom HTML. Yes, you can do that. Like that is simpler, but it's less transparent. So I want it to be more transparent. So if you wanted to use to edit it or add anything that you want, you can also do it. But yeah, so just to illustrate, the question was, instead of using this as a custom HTML, you can use as a Matomo Analytics tag, which you can do. So, okay, like you can use this one. Cool. Any more questions? I'm looking at the chat a bit ahead of time. Hope I didn't go too fast. Yeah, there are no questions here. So if there are more questions, or if you're watching this after the session, you can point at the QR on the left to see a small write-up of this presentation. So you can follow step by step without having to go back and forth in the video. Or on the right, you can reach out on Twitter. Thank you all. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Fabio. I will close the session and close the recording. Thank you.
Thanks.
Matomo Surveys plugin. This is something we built at Mist Analytics. It's something we thought was still missing in Matomo, because Matomo is a very good solution to know how many visitors there are on your website, what pages have been visited, everything around the what, the where, and how much and how many, but not necessarily know the why visitors visit your website, and asking for feedback on certain functionalities or elements on the website. So it's something that we thought was missing, and we built it at Mist Analytics to provide this for users of Matomo. It's only available for now in the on-premise environment of Matomo, because Matomo unfortunately doesn't offer the cloud environment to enable third-party plugins yet, but it's there. Yeah, and I'm going to share something about this setup and how to set us up the survey plugins, what kind of reports you will receive, how you can manage your submissions, what kind of functionalities are possible, and what kind of questions you could ask your visitors. And I have some examples of surveys that are currently live at some of our clients. And then in the end, we have room for some questions. I think I have around 15-20 minutes to talk, and we have plenty of time for some questions if you have. So let's start with the actual survey plugin installation. This is quite straightforward. It's just a zip file that you put into your Matomo on-premises instance, and you're able to get going, and you get some additional functionalities and menu items in your Matomo instance. So I start at the settings area, where you go to settings, and then you have the survey settings here, which is being enabled after you installed the plugin. You can create surveys, you can manage your surveys, and you can manage submissions. But for now, we will start with creating a survey. So normally I click on create survey. Now I'm at manage surveys, and I see all my surveys that I already created right here. These are some examples. So one of the examples is the full survey, which is actually for this particular presentation. I will edit this one. I will see the same environment when I create a new survey, but now I edit a current one. So I will provide the survey with a name. I'm able to set a description, so it's pretty similar to what you do when you set up a Matomo goal or some custom reporting example. You also have setting a name and a description there. Then you're able to set the color of the actual survey. It works with hexadecimal colors. You have a color picker in there, and you also have some predefined colors, and you can search for any color that you would like, and you can set your actual survey colors in there. Then you're able to set the font color. A description is also being stated at the right, so a bit of explanation in the solution itself. For now, you have a white colored text there, fonts there, and we have the color of the button, and then the color of when you hover with your mouse over the button. So we set this to sort of light orange and darker orange when you hover over the button with your mouse. We also provided a way to set up specific classes for your Matomo survey, because when it pops up, you can also enable this class to inherit certain CSS values within your website. So you're able to have the same style and classes and HTML classes, and also the same CSS styles that your website design already has. So you can inherit this one in your survey as well, which is convenient, and we use this quite often actually. Then we go to the actual questions. You're able to set up additional fields here, so you can set up the entire flow of where your visitors go to when they navigate through your survey. And you can add certain fields here. So I can just click the green button and then add certain fields, and then additional fields are being added here. And I can add as many as I would like. So for now, I will remove this one and get to the other fields, which are already set there, and already explain the different unique kind of questions that you're able to ask within this survey solution. Sorry. So we have the field type stars. which enable you to set up a sort of rating in terms of star. You can set 1, 3, or 5 stars, in example, and then you have a bit of feedback from your users where they actually rate their experience or rate their purchase experience for you, or their how they behave and how they experience the website. You can even set specific classes again for a specific question if that's convenient for you or your specific situation. Then you can set up the label, and the label is actually the actual question that you ask to your users. So how would you rate us is the current question. Again, there's a description on the right, which is being set there. You can also state whether it should be required or not, because some questions might be possible for users to skip or just not answer at all, and some questions probably you would really need or require an answer to, and otherwise they cannot proceed within the process. So that's also possible to set up a required question. And you can set up a default value to explain a bit more what kind of things could be filled in there. An example, you have a default value with a start of a sentence. An example, I rate my experience as this or that, and then you can set a default value there, or you're able to do so. And you can obviously remove these fields as I just did for the new added fields at the bottom. So these are stars. I will show the demo and how this looks like in a couple of minutes. Then we have the smileys. It's pretty similar to stars, but then we have smiles, and we can ask visitors to rate their experience in sort of smileys. Perhaps you know this from Usabilla or Hotjar, other kind of solutions which are also apply this, and it's now also available in Matomo. We can set classes again. We can state another question. So how would you rate your experience so far? A required setting, and then also the default value is pretty similar to the other one, to the stars. We have a scale, so we can set up a sort of net promoter score or any other kind of scale rating, asking your visitors about certain feedback or certain ratings on specific elements or experiences on your website or online platform. And this is similar with classes and the actual label with the question again, but also setting a scale, of course, with 1 to 10, or I can set 1 to 5, or any other scale that you prefer. We have a text area. Text area is actually to provide generic input from users and asking them really about the why. So again, you can ask a specific question, of course, and then you can state how could we improve. So you really collect specific reasons or specific feedback from your users, and this could be very valuable to improve and optimize your website customer experience there. Visit experience. Text area is a bigger text area to fill in, and we have a smaller text field to only have like a couple of words or a sentence to fill in. So text area is a bit of broader scope there. And we have radio buttons which have some already predefined answers and a sort of selective list, exclusive list that you ask your visitors to fill in. An example, this is just a simple yes or no. So are you able to find where you were looking for? And then yes or no. So this is already providing some feedback whether visitors are really satisfied or not, or can find what they are looking for or not. So this could be interesting as well. So then I can save and view it. For now, I'll get back to the overview, and then I set my colors, my design, and the survey settings can be found here. So when I go back to the manage surveys settings part, I can take a look at my full survey again, and I can see a preview here by clicking this one. And then I can see, like, all right, I see the different stars. I can navigate next and I see the different smileys that I set here. And I can see the different scales with also the questionnaire. How likely would you recommend us to your friends? So I can set and go back. I see the text area, which is just a test I can fill in here, and also a test here. How did you find us? So perhaps I say, all right, so if I Google search an example, and then I go back. Furthermore, I mean, and then where you're able to find where you were looking for. Yes, I did, and then I can submit it. But obviously, this is a demo environment, so this is like the settings environment of Matomo. So submissions are disabled, so you get an alert, and then it's disabled, and you can set. Thank you for your feedback. Currently, it supports. We can change the languages. You can also change this by some script that's just triggering just before your actual survey pop-up triggers, and we'll probably enable more languages in the future to come by default. But for now, you can set your own language from the start, and then that's it. Or you need to change it in different languages later on. To trigger the actual survey, this is possible by using the Matomo Tag Management System. So here's the full survey as a tag. And as soon as you installed the Matomo Surveys plugin, you're able to have some additional functionalities, as we just saw in the settings environment. And we're also able to see an additional tag type then. So when I go to the Matomo surveys or to the Matomo Tag Management System, I see the survey tag in here. So we have custom HTML, which is always available, custom image, and then we also have surveys, and we can see what kind of things are being filled in there. So the tag type is surveys then, and we have a name, surveys then, and the description again, so name and description. We can choose from the list of surveys that we set in the that we created. So in the Matomo settings environment, we created multiple surveys, and then in the tag management system, we can choose which surveys to set, and then we can choose a survey here. So here is the different list, the entire list of different surveys. Let's say I'm just a yes or no simple survey. Let's choose one. And then I can choose any trigger. I only have 3 now in my demo environment, but I can create any trigger. And obviously, we know that with the Matomo Tag Management System, we are able to set different triggers. So when we create a trigger, we have a lot of flexibility with the Matomo Tag Management System, and we're able to trigger the survey pop-up at any time. Actually, we can even trigger it when someone is leaving from the window, or has reached a certain scroll depth, or reached a combination of how many seconds combined with a specific page of those kind of things, or clicked a certain element on the website, and add to cart, or click on a button or an element, and then we're able to trigger the survey at any time we would, at any moment we would prefer. So that's basically how we set up the survey and what it offers and what kind of options we have and how we can trigger it within the Matomo Tag Management System. Then let's go to the actual, the more interesting parts where we visualize the incoming data. So one of the reports that is being created as soon as you create a survey, a different reporting environment will be set within your dashboard, and then within your menu of the default reporting environment, and then you see the surveys section with all the different surveys in there. So we have different surveys here. For this example, I still stick to the full survey demo environment, which we set up. And then we have some example data here where we see the total survey submissions. So in a trend line over time, we see the different survey submissions. So we see how many people submitted a survey at all. And then we can export this data by default. This is like default Matomo functionality. So we can export the data in any way we would like. We can download it as an image or set different annotations in there, just like a normal trend visualization in Matomo works. And we see the total surveys being set here that are being submitted. Then when we scroll a bit more down, we see all the submissions. So the entire table with all the different answers that have been given by users. We see, so like an example, how would you rate us? We see the different answers that have been given, with smileys, the stars, and the different ratings, the scales. We also see the actual answers here. We see the different answers on the text area and the text fields. We are also able to see the radio buttons here. So are you able to find where you are looking for? And we see yes and no. And we see the different URLs that have been filled in. So from which, this is only one test page that we use on our website, but normally you would see like all the different pages from where users actually filled in your survey, which is quite convenient, because then you can already check where people feel the need to fill in and leave their feedback to you. We added some columns in there, so we have the device type, browser, and the actual date that someone filled it in, also for exporting purposes as well. But we see the device type with smartphone and desktop, and the different browsers that have been used to from where users filled in your survey and submitted their feedback. We have some the surveys plugin offers some options to redact and hide, in example, sensitive data like the email address. This is an example here. Oh, sorry. So by default, it checks whether there are email addresses in the actual text area or text fields are being filled in, and it's going to hide them. It's also applicable to bank account numbers, so that's also hidden in there. That's done by default, and we'll probably expand this in the future, or if you have any very particular requests for this, we can definitely expand the filters on this and expand the functionalities on this for you. Again, as well, you can search in the answers, which is also a default Matomo visualization option within the table section. So we're able to search for specific answers in here, and we can obviously show more rows if we would like. So then we have the different rating parts, the rating questions regarding the stars, the smileys, or the scales. And we have additional visualization will be added per given question or per given field that you added within your survey. So as soon as you added these kind of questions within your Matomo survey, then these visualizations will be added there by default. So these are all reports that are that come out of the box as soon as you create a survey. We have a diagram here, and then we have a bar graph and a pie chart as well. We can change it to pie chart. And then we have the vertical bar graph, but we can also display the simple table again. By default, it will show the vertical bar graph, but we have different options in there to visualize as Matomo offers by default. We can export all these different visualizations as well. So you can also analyze it a bit deeper within in Excel or any other solution that you prefer, or export it and use the API of Matomo to retrieve it and get it into your data visualization solutions like Tableau or Power BI or any other solutions like Clickfolio or any other solutions that you prefer. Furthermore, we at the very bottom there is a summary, a trend again. So over time you can see for the different rating questions regarding the smileys, the stars, the actual scales, what the average is. So that's interesting, because then you can see if you improve certain things on your website, whether the experience has improved or not, or whether the feedback went from perhaps a bit negative to more positive from users, and that's interesting to see. So here we can see the average on like we have a 4, and then it goes a bit higher. Then we have a decline in here, and then it goes back to peak again. And we can see this trend line over time to see how it evolves over time, and how the customer satisfaction or the visitor feedback is hopefully improving over time when we make the website a bit better for each day. And on the very bottom, we have a summary of the total of with all the yeses and nos on the actual questions, are where you were able to find where you were looking for. So it's convenient for you to see straight away whether everyone was finding what they were looking for or not. Instead of you calculating it manually, it's already done for you. And we see the averages here as well regarding the rating questions in a table format. So that's how the default visualization looks like. And obviously, as mentioned, you were able to download it and export all the data and visualize or analyze it in any way you prefer. So that's it for the visualization part. And furthermore, we have some functionalities regarding the manage of submissions. This is also part of the settings area. And we added this because I just mentioned that we prefer to hide email addresses and those kind of perhaps sensitive data that could get in there via text areas or text fields, but it's depending on who users fill in. But in case there is some data in there that unfortunately came into your data set, then you are able to delete specific rows. So instead of, you can, with the managed surveys, you can delete your entire survey. So you get a pop-up and you get a question whether you would like to delete the survey, and it's also mentioning and checking it double with you, because all the submissions linked to this survey will be deleted from the Matomo UI, as well as from the database as well. So it will be entirely deleted. But for the managed surveys part, you can select a specific survey. So again, you can select from the entire list of surveys that you created, you can select a specific survey. And then you see all the different submissions in there. You can show more rows in here. But then you're able to delete a specific row, in example. So you're just able to delete this particular submission, and only this specific row will be deleted entirely, in case you really would need this. Then finally, I can show you an example of, this is like an example on our demo environment. You can visit it on this URL, and this is like basically the same that I just shown you, but then I'm really going to fill it in. So just a test, and then how did you find us? I find you via an email click or an example. I found what I was looking for, and then I submit it, and then I get thank you for your feedback, and then it's not shown against to me, because it's being remembered at the actual in a local storage item. It's being remembered, and you get a form ID, and then you're able to see yes declined or yes filled in, and you can see your different forms in there. And then as soon as someone has this item in its overview, it's not the survey isn't shown twice to a given user on this given device in this given browser. So it won't annoy your visitors too much as soon as you have set it. You can also customize this, of course, within your Matomo Tag Management System. I just deleted the local storage item, so I see the survey again. And I was looking for some examples of some of our clients that are already using this, but some surveys didn't went offline. I found one for the Corona websites, for the COVID websites, the Dutch COVID websites, and they're still using our Matomo surveys plugin, which is being stated like, what are you looking for? Did you find it or not? And then asking for some feedback, and then you're using it on their websites, on their COVID pages. This is from the Dutch government. And then finally, if you would like to read a bit more or have a summary, I have a Medium item here, which is explaining the advantages. And then also a YouTube video was created, or feel free to add me to LinkedIn and ask some additional questions or some specific questions for your given use case. Yeah, that's it from my end. That was the demo of the survey environment, the survey plugin, and what it offers. Let me know if there are any questions. Thank you so far.
Thank you, Stefan. I'm looking at the chat, and there is actually no question, but we can wait for a few seconds, few minutes, in order to see if someone asks.
Fine. Yeah. And otherwise, we end a bit early, I think.
Oh, no worries for the time. So we have 45 minutes slots, so we can do shorter. I just stopped the recording, and there's still no question in the chat, so maybe we can say that the end of your talk. So thank you for the talk, Stefan.
Yes.
Very interesting, and hope you will stay for the whole events. And maybe if someone have question later, you will be able to answer in the chat. So maybe you can check the room many times per day. Thank you.
Sure, no, it's fine, and thank you for moderating. And we'll be away this afternoon, but tomorrow I'm back, and then probably some hours this afternoon as well. But we'll be fine.
Perfect.
Yeah. Do you know, Ronan, how many people in total we have?
Oh, actually, no. And we are living in many platforms, such as Big Blue Button, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So I don't have the statistics. Maybe just ask for Ronan Chardonnay.
Good. Screws. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Matomo Raw Data and Tableau. I have a short presentation. It's not so long as the other presentation you see, but we're going to deep dive into Tableau, deep dive in prep, and it is a use case. So I tell you about now what happens with the case. Now, who am I? My name is Peter Boyton. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm Dutch. I'm a senior web analyst at Duo. It's Dutch government, and I pronounce it in Dutch. It's Dienstuitvoering Onderwijs. I'm working with a team of in total 4 Matomo Tableau specialists at this moment. The first, how did it start? It started by a new installation of Matomo end 2018. I came in 2018, in the start of 2018 with Duo, and they have a broker of Pivik Matomo, and the broker cancels his contract, or Duo cancels the contract. I don't know the precise. And we needed a new installation. So we asked for a server, and we installed Matomo. The visualization loading time was not good when they installed it. It was long. The API did not work. We had 100 users plus, and now it was not working. Why it was not working? It was performance, and performance is key. So all our 100 plus users don't want to use Matomo anymore. So we must get a solution to get them get the data. At that time, we had 500,000 plus data lines per day in 2018. Now it is 1.4 million plus, sometimes many more, sometimes with less per day in our database. So we have a huge database. I think it's probably 300 gigabytes at the time. The steps that we have to take to now resolve this problem, it was speed, and performance. Users don't want to wait on the dashboards. So we mirror the database, we installed Redis, and we cancel all the blobs. So we cancel the visualization of Matomo. So we must do something else. And we gave users access again. Access with no blobs is no data. So how do you do that? Now, we do that with Tableau. Tableau and the advantages of Matomo and Tableau is it has a little bit advantage, no advantage, but it's easy to link to other data sources. So if you're in control of the raw data, you can combine it with other data at your company. Usually with Tableau, and I will show you Tableau Prep, it's very easy to combine data. If you can combine data, you can enrich data. And enriching data is a key component if you want to use Tableau or a data visualization tool that it's external. Because our data is now bigger than big, if you make segments into the Matomo visualizations, it don't work. So we can now make with Tableau Prep and Tableau our own segments. And we have large data sets, so we can take part of that large data set and make visualizations of a part of our data. And of course, you can get your own standards. I can show you later on. If we use Tableau, and Tableau Prep, we make all the calculations of time spent or the bounce rates ourselves. So you can tweak those standards if you want. Now, how did we make the connection? First, we must download all the SQL files and tables of Matomo. So we download the raw data. Then we use Tableau Prep. Tableau Prep is a modeling tool, and the modeling tool that uses all the data, and we can enhance so the ATL, the data for further use in our visualizations. Now the big question is which database tables are needed. Now the website of Matomo is now very clear with it. You have your log visit table. It contains only entries, one entry per visit. So all your visit data is in this database table. The log action is all the type and actions possible on the website. So all your URLs, your page titles, your download URLs, your events, everything is storing in this table. We have now a problem. Our log action table is 10 gigabytes big. So it's a big table if you have lots of data, but it's a very important table if you want to do and use raw data. You have the log link visit action. Contains one entry per action or per visitor. So your page view, I think you know the data. those three database tables we use. The log conversion and another one, the log conversion item, we don't use. Because a conversion is an action or a visit to a certain URL or people did an action, and we can do that in Tableau. So we only use the first three database tables to get our data in Tableau, in Tableau Prep. Now, there are a little bit problems that when we started this, and what I say, we have a large log action table. The last log action table is what I say, it is a use case of duo.nl. Every user that logs in duo.nl gets a unique URL. We have now custom URLs for that, but in the start we don't have it. There were sessions data in the URL, so our log action table was bigger than big. We have 45 DevOps teams or 45 teams that can put data into our Matomo database. So we must go to all the 45 teams and say, okay, if you have a session URL or a variable in the URL, don't do it because our data gets larger than large. Downloading the files, and there was a big problem. Matomo, the database of Matomo is also the database that you put in the data into Matomo. So into the same database, you get the same actions if you had it on the same server, if you want to download everything. So what we did, no, I get back. What we did is we mirrored the database. So we had another SQL database that was mirrored, and that's why on another server we can download all the files, and we don't have any problems with speed and performance from our Matomo server. Another problem was you have multiple joins from one Excel or SQL data file if you want to join all the data. I can show you that later in prep, but yeah, it's a problem, and it gets really big. And the speed, because we have nowadays 1.5 million records each day. If you want up to date data, it's a problem, but we do it now once a week, sometimes sooner, but real-time data is out of the question at this time. The joins. Now, let's take a look at Tableau Prep. And I hope everybody sees this. I have watched on the other computer the chat, and I don't think I have a comment that nobody can see this. No. I zoom in a little bit. What you can see, you have the three tables. the log link visit action, the log visit, and the log action. Log action is too big in our company, so we have a Tableau extract for that, and the else they are CSV files. And the CSV files are not the whole database, but a part of it. You can see here on the right, we load all the data in. There are 2 text files and 1 database. That's the hyper file, the log action file. The cleaning is not important now, but the first join is important. We do the first join on ID visit. So the visit action and the visits we join on ID visits, and then they are connected. The action type table is a little bit different, and now I close this. I go to the Matomo database schema, and if we head over the action types, there are a lot of action types here. You see here, we have 16 different action types. Page title, an outlink, a download. All those action types must be joined with the visit action table and visit visits, so you know what kind of action the people are taking. So you can see we have not one join, we have multiple joins. And if you can read Dutch, and you can see interaction URL, interaction ref, interaction name, type 8, event category, event action, and you can see all those here. So the size, event category, event action. You can see we don't use the e-commerce, the 5, 6, and 7 categories, and that's because the Dutch government is not an e-commerce site, and for the how you say it, the e-commerce point. So if somebody has ordered something or taken certain action, we use the URL of the success page. Now, also there is data in the URL or the page title or something, because we have 45 DevOps themes that we don't want to get in our data, and we don't want to get in our dashboards. Now we can mask with Tableau and Tableau Prep the data. We had a problem because when we in 2018 started, we had version 3.14 of the 3.12, I suppose. I did it in my head. I don't know for sure. And with all the data, we can't get to another server. So we did a bit of a hump in our data and a hump in our server migration. So we have a little Python script that get our time spent, because custom dimension was off, and all the old data and all the new data, we had a bump, and so we used Tableau Prep to make that. This is an old prep flow. The new prep flow is different. but this is an app, all prep flow, but I want to show you that you can use Python scripts or R scripts in Tableau Prep to enhance your data of Matomo. Now, if we go further, this is time spent. We have a scroll depth, but we want to get the max scroll depth to get our data smaller. So we get the max scroll depth, and then we coupled another fields. You can see it's real-time data. We clean our data, and we have an output of an hyperfile. That's Tableau Prep, and the prepping of raw data of Matomo is different because of the raw data. You must do your calculations by yourself, and it's a little bit hard. When we are at prep, then it's Tableau, and I have a clean data sheet of Tableau, and we have the data, and you can see we are having templates, so everything is the same. This is Tableau, and I have what you say dashboard of Tableau, and this is browser history. Okay, I have a question. The interaction, I don't hear anything, so that's a problem. You just give the eye from here and there, but there are any detailed documentations of all the relationships of the database. No, the relationships it joins, I can show them later on. And then we go to prep, and I don't know if you can see this. It's a join. ID action URL ref is ID action. So it's a join to two tables, but it's not one join. It's many joins. If you want more information at the end of the presentation, I'll give you more information. And my presentation is 30 minutes, so I have 15 minutes for a Q&A. So we can do the questions at the end. Tableau. This is our data. This is our a dashboard, and there's a browser dashboard. I don't know which site it is, but it's one of our sites, and you can see we can make dashboards very interactive with Tableau. Of course, you can see the mouse overs. You can see the icons of Safari Mobile, Chrome, and then all that. This is the main part that we use Tableau. We can make our own dashboards that are interactive, and the performance is okay. The performance at what you say, Matomo at first install was not okay. This is a blank Tableau canvas. We have our own template, and if you can see now, if I want to get all the browsers, so me 5 seconds and I have all the browsers. I can see how many persons are in browsers, but no, it's a bit privacy data, so I don't get the browsers. But if you want to get the browser version, it's possible. And this is live data. Now I have the browsers, but I can also do it with referral types. I will add all. I will call I can then swipe everything, and it's now easy to get all your own dashboards. I think this is the end of my presentation, and I think there were questions, but I don't know if I
actually
heard the
there is
questions
no
or
more
I
questions in
need
the
to
chat.
get them out of the chat box.
Okay, I think actually there is no more questions. Maybe we can wait for a few seconds.
Help me for that.
Okay, I think we are done. Thank you, Peter, for the talk. Very interesting. We had some questions in the chat, but you already answered
any
all of
questions. I
them.
don't hear anything, I suppose. I go to my own session. Yeah, I think I hear something.
Yes, there is a question. Thomas asked, did you do any additional modification of the data, like adding extra meta data or similar? Peter, are you still in the room? I just pasted the question in the chat. If you want to read it.
Ask a question. Did you do any additional modification on the data, like adding extra metadata or similar? Yeah, we have adding a scroll depth to the data and other data. Yeah, and we have our customer happiness, and our Matomo ID is getting into the customer happiness database, so we can combine that data together, so we can see not only on which page the customer filled our smiles, but what kind of track record he has. Thomas Pearson is also chatting, and then Ronan, can you get the question? I don't hear anything. It's strange, but did you? Nee, there are no more questions. That was a question from Thomas, and I answered it.
Yes, it was question from Thomas in the chat, but I just copied that question for you to see it in the big blue button.
Other questions?
I think we are done. We can leave the room if you are done.
Hello and welcome to Matomocamp, Matomo plugin best practices. I'm excited about this presentation because I made a presentation last year where I was talking a little bit too much, so I went over time. So, and that presentation was a little bit more focused on Vue.js and how to develop Matomo plugins specifically for Vue.js. I'm glad that I chose a more generic approach this time because the last releases of Matomo is having some issues with Vue. So a little about myself. My online acronym is Georges. I forgot my speaker notes. So I'm an open source evangelist. Been working with open source for as long as I can remember, probably 12 plus years or something. And I'm a Matomo advocate. I've been working with Matomo from the early Pivik days. Been running some of the biggest installations you can possibly imagine for Matomo. I'm also a DevOps expert and educator. I love to share my knowledge about open source products and specifically about Matomo. I have a bachelor degree in computer and system science, but I'm always superseding myself, learning new things, and I'm also educated in neuro leadership, which is one of the coolest things I know. I'm also a visionary, and as of officially this week, I'm working as operation manager for privacy at Great IT. So I've been freelancing for a year, been working, trying to get my business up and running, and now I'm running this privacy thing at Great IT as an incubator, which is cool. Let's move on. Let's see. Right. I'm also, I think I'm the first actually official certified Matomo master trainer because I was contacted by Matomo for a job with a client some while ago. We did great. And I've been talking to some of the executives at InnoCraft, the company behind Matomo, and I was pushing them to like, okay, can we get the certification program going, and so on and so on. So I actually helped them to choose which logo they were gonna go with. So that was kind of cool. Yeah, okay. So how to develop a Matomo plugin. So you probably, if you come to this presentation, you probably Googled and tried to find information about how to develop a Matomo plugin. So there is, of course, official documentation, which most of the time works pretty well, and you get by pretty good. I've done a lot of Matomo plugin presentations over the years, and people always try to connect with me and ask me questions because they run into some kind of problem or whatever. So some of the plugins I have built, for example, a integration to EU Commission, because governmental authorities, agencies have demands that they need to consolidate their website data into a centralized data analytics team at the EU Commission. So that's one plugin, for example, that I built for Matomo to send that kind of data into their APIs. I have built, well, I've been contributing to a lot of plugins, for example, Matomo Extra Tools, which is built by my former company and my former associate, Micke, which I'm pretty surprised that he's not having any presentation this year, because he's really awesome. Anyways, let's go through some things. So Matomo plugin ecosystem. Matomo is built with Symfony, and they have adapted a lot of out-of-the-box Symfony ways of thinking and coding standards and conventions, which is great. Not necessarily the way Symfony is building their framework nowadays, but it still works and it's pretty good and straightforward. So that's a good thing. So everything is in the same place. All the plugins basically looks the same, and you get and try to keep the same standards and conventions so that it's easier for other people to come in and help you, or you can help other plugin developers also. And it's really easy to get started, and it's really easy to you get so much out of the box from Matomo, like if you want to generate reports and stuff, and the documentation is very extensive. So yeah, and there's of course official Matomo documentation on how to set up plugins, pretty much standard. And so what I'm gonna assume, if you're watching this presentation, is that you already have some kind of knowledge of PHP, you have some kind of familiarity with the terminal or console, and you know how to put up your own local environment, because we don't want to be building anything on production. That's great. So what I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you some basic commands in the console, Matomo console specifically that I'm talking about, some plugin architecture, some key components and hooks, API, etc. Also, I'm going to show you some coding conventions for consistency and maintainability, how to leverage existing APIs for data retrieval and manipulation, creating custom APIs within your plugin. That's a huge deal, because that's probably what you're gonna spend your time on most of the time. and design an intuitive, user-friendly interface, incorporate Matomo's UI components and styles, best practices for database interactions. If I get time over, I will show you how to handle large data sets efficiently, strategies for effectively testing your plugin, tools and techniques for debugging, and documentation, and how you can contribute to the Matomo community. Because when you develop a plugin, you can also publish it at Marketplace, Matomo Marketplace. And if you have any questions, I'm sure Ronan will keep an eye on the comments, and I will happily answer you if you have any kind of questions. So let's get digging in some code. So the problem I had before this presentation was that I have automated a lot of stuff, how I set up my environments, and unfortunately right now my disk space is running out, so I had to do it all over again. Let's see if I have. Let's do it. While I'm doing this, I will also show you some other stuff. Oh, okay. The thing is, I was using the latest Matomo, and I figured out, or I bumped into some issues that are actually in the issue, Matomo issue queue. It's always good to know, because sometimes if you're pulling your hair out and you don't know what's happening or why, you can always check the issue queue. Fortunately, this is what happened to me right before this presentation. So the build environment is not up to date. So which is why I try to download a different Matomo version. As you see, I have a bunch of Matomo installations here. Let's clone down the latest, but I'm going to change the version to 4.12.1. I think was the latest one I was using when I was developing. So I know that that one will compile my code. And meanwhile, I'm going to show you. If you have any issues or you want to install Matomo yourself, if you have never done it before, I can recommend for you to go into my GitHub. You can find a bunch of repos here. So I have one called Matomo Setup. This will clone down the latest, or you can actually have an environment file. You can specify which version you want to install, if you have a Matomo license, and so on and so on. It will even generate a new database for you. If you don't have a database, I mean, you need to install MySQL, of course, by yourself. But there's a bunch of stuff that if you forget sometimes or you need help, this is a great repo to get started with Matomo. Even if you want to have your own MaxMindDB installation, for example, if you have a license for premium plugins or custom plugins, so I have automated everything, and you can just follow the README here. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah, I guess that's it. So this is gonna take way too long time. So I'm gonna see if I can start with a different Matomo. This is just my CA. There's no that one. Okay. So I tried all these steps before just to make sure that everything works, so that I don't run into any surprises, which is why I found out that the development environment is out of date. Right. So we want to have a different branch. I'm pretty sure it's check out. See if that works. And whenever you do that, you need to also run a git Linux sub. Let's see. Git Linux. All right. So let's see if we have a working Matomo. So we haven't. What I can do is to there we go. And I was playing Matomo 5. I don't remember what I was. Maybe I named it differently, like Matomocamp, like so. Awful lot of applications open. I can close them down. Yay, okay, so we have a working Matomo locally. And I think for testing purposes, just use admin tests. I got my own logo here. So I was created a new page where you can also find all the steps, so you can follow what I do step by step. Matomocamp plugin 2023. I haven't pushed to this repo yet, but I will. I remember where I put it. Window, open reason. There we go. This is a cheat sheet for me because I have done all the steps and I forget things, but one thing to remember is to always enable development mode. Now it's comparing. Maybe I haven't installed Composer. Classic. Make sure you always on that. So we have enabled development mode, and now this is where Matomo is kind of useful because they have this scaffolding functionality. So you don't have to do everything manually. I also wrote a blog post probably 2 years ago, which goes in more into depth how you can like make sure you have the correct node version and how you can create a simple view plugin. And we have the official guides, and also there's a repo if you just want to clone down a repo that works with working functionality. That's cool also. So this is a repo I used to send in a bug report to the core team. Let's see. Okay, we don't have any plugins here, no plugins here. Okay, let's get coding. So we want to generate a plugin. We can Matomocamp 1. Good presentation, and this is default one. Now we have scaffolded all the files we need for a basic plugin, but still nothing here. You cannot see anything. And of course, you want to like when you're developing, you want to see some results. And that's something we're going to see here. Okay, we're getting some errors, but that's okay for now. We want to activate the plugin. first of all. I didn't get this much errors right before this presentation. It's probably because I changed the PHP version or the Matomo version to an older one. And still nothing here yet. Because we haven't created any, we have no view. Not in Vue.js, I mean a general template, a Vue template. So we get some basic stuff here with our having API method for plugin. But we also want to generate a controller so we can actually do something with the plugin. So we're going to do that now. And of course, there's a typo. And there's no such thing as controller. So there we go. Now we got a controller here. Now this is what we should see in our plugin. Maybe I need to update the version because it is, it's really annoying to get all those error messages. Let's do a 13, which was a 15.1. Just for now because we don't need to show you the view specifics. Let's do a reinstall compose because it's a package that is generating this annoying error message. So I'm just going to get rid of that. Now, basically, we should be able to see our plugin code or our plugin. So this is a mess because you Google something and you get here, but what you really want to do is you want to go to the developer zone here, setting up. Plugin after plugin. Yeah, and then I should be able to do something like that. All right. There we go. First, it's called Matomocamp. And now we can see our answer to life is 42. A hitchhiker's guide to galaxy. But we want to have a nicer. We don't want to take over the whole Matomo. So what we will do, we will, instead of extending in our template here, you can see that we are extending the dashboard, but what we really want to do is that we want to extend the admin tool. So we get the menus and everything out of the box. Right? And we also want to have some kind of buttons. So we will start with that. And we will generate a menu. And now we've got a menu file here. And there are, so Matomo will scaffold everything, but they are commented out. And you can see if we have the top menu item, we will add a menu item to the blue section in the top. Matomocamp, my top item. And the reason why it looks ugly or the text is like this, it's because it's a placeholder if you want to add translations in the future. So it's a feature, it's not a bug, which is kind of good. Let's see. We can just comment out everything and see what we get. There is actually, yeah, we won't be able to use that one because it's deprecated. And now we have a menu here also. And this is the admin dashboard. What if we want to have a menu item in, let's say, a metrics dashboard? Well, you cannot create a menu item if you don't have a report or a widget. So let's go ahead and create a widget. And then if you don't want people to use your widget, you can also add code to disable it so that they cannot customize it into the dashboard if you want. Let's see. Or we can do, so if I say here that I want it to be under visitors or behavior, or I can create a new one. awesome reports, let's say. Now I can start implementing the render method. Let's see, how did we do it? Okay, it's not showing up yet because we need to configure something. Here's if you want to disable the widget. Widget clicks. Right, we need to add it to the menu after we have a widget. Sometimes you forget things, so you have to look them up. So I think I have saved. Code here. Let's see. It's because it's doing like that. No, no. Anyways, there's a lot more you can do. And as I said, with you can, if you want to generate view code and start building front end, you can generate a view component, something like button. Then you get the src folder here, button. You get the default scaffolding code here. So you can easily get up and running and start developing sample component. And you have the adapter. I talked a lot about this in my previous talk, so if you want to figure out what this does, just look at the old presentation. You want to add an ID that we can attach our component to in our twig. The problem here is that now when we want to build our file, we want to have the correct node version, first of all. So I have a way to figure out which version Matomo is using themselves. So I will do a use. Then of course you need to install npm. And do you have any kind of questions?
Actually, there is no question in the chat.
Yeah. I know that people are scared to write in the chat, but they will contact me afterwards on LinkedIn. So don't be afraid, just add me on LinkedIn if you have any questions, if you want me to help you with your plugin.
You will stay available in the chat after the talk, maybe.
Yes, of course.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I will share the presentation. Or my last video, it took about a year to get it posted. But I think we can be faster this year. But I will just keep going until you tell me to stop, because
So how much time you need to continue? Because we are at the end of the time, but we can like extend the session for 5 minutes.
I know that this step is gonna fail because there's a, as I showed you before, in the Matomo GitHub issue, the view build environment is not working with the newest version because Matomo released a version where
With that
they
issue
forgot to
in it,
update
so
the view.
you can't run your plugin.
So I cannot build a view right now. I need to change the older version of Matomo, but then I get other problems in the PHP warnings and stuff.
Okay, so if you're done, we can stop the session. If you're okay with that,
Yeah.
I can
But
close
this is
the
pretty much all
recording.
the steps.
Sorry?
This is pretty much all the steps to get started with building a plugin.
Okay.
There is also, of course, I just want to mention quickly, if you need help, there's the developer zone here. It's quite useful. And after widgets, the next thing would be report visualizations. And there's so much stuff you get for free from Matomo if you use their way of creating the reports. So you will get all these buttons and everything just out of the box, which is quite neat. And you have a view data table. This is the one you need to use, the class. And you can nest the reports also into each other. So that's quite cool.
Okay, but so thank you, Jorge, for the talk. So we will now close the session. We have another session to prepare. So as Enzo just said, we have to close the room, and maybe we. Okay, I just stopped the recording.
So, just a sec, and I'm just gonna prepare one thing. So I'm good to go. Oh, okay. Okay, hello and welcome everyone. I think we are live now. See? Yeah, so this talk. Oh, I forgot to change the name of in my presentation. I think it's the correct one. I'm going to talk about troubleshooting in Matomo, which is can be very hard or cumbersome from point to point. If you're using Matomo, you probably run into some kind of issues, or you get frustrated of something and you don't know where to go to find help or get the answers you need. So I'm going to talk about that, and I'm Jorge Powers. I go by Georges. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm an open source advocate. I've been using Matomo from the old PVIC days for many years. I've been working with open source for 12 plus years. I started developing coding in the 90s. So I've been around for a long time. I even worked with DevOps and cloud engineering. But I'm always learning new stuff, and I've been recently certified in neuro leadership, which is quite cool. I'm also a visionary. So as of officially this week, I'm operations manager at Great IT for a new business area called privacy, where I'm going to help clients with their data governance and Matomo or PVIC or Adobe Analytics or even GA4, and make sure that they're tracking in a good way. That's it. I'm also recently a certified Matomo Master Trainer. I believe I was one of the first ones because I even got to help the executives at InnoCraft to choose which logo they wanted to, or which logo they were going to use for the certification program, which is quite neat, I think. So when you encounter a problem in Matomo, oftentimes you just want to blame Matomo for the issues that you encounter. Many times it could be your own setup, or if you're trying to track a specific flow, you need to make sure you have enabled cookies or like stuff like that. So I'm going to show you some tips and tricks on how to make sure that you do it right. Let's see here. Of course, you have also, you could bump into issues when you're installing Matomo. Server requirements, all those kind of things are public in the Matomo documentation. So usually when you encounter a problem, you would make sure you have the correct requirements if you install yourself. Unfortunately, if you're using Matomo Cloud, oftentimes you cannot tweak the configuration. You could always send in a support request to the core team or to the people working for Matomo. And from my experience, it's not always that easy to get what you need. So maybe if you're thinking about hosting it yourself, you have a lot of documentation on Matomo FAQs, but also in the developer zone. And if you want to make sure you have all the correct packages installed, and so on and so on. And now a little bit more specific. When you run into any issues, I would suggest that you should have a Matomo installation locally where a development environment, because Matomo is like any other application. You don't want to mess with production data. So make sure you test everything first in a local development environment. Maybe you have a staging server, you can test there also. It's quite important because oftentimes I see people just installing one installation on production and they test everything on production. That's not always optimal, my point of view. And then as I've done here, I've generated some fake visits. It can take some time, so you need to prepare and then do it continuously. Also, you can automate. If you're using Mac or Windows, you have some kind of task manager where you can run the console command to generate fake visits every day, for example. So you have a good data sample to work on. Now, because I recently installed a new Matomo, let's see if I'm using the correct. I like to use Tag Manager because it gives me more freedom to customize how I track. I can change things more, which also opens up more room for errors. So be sure that you know what you're doing, and usually you can get a long way with just basic knowledge of JavaScript. It helps a lot. Of course, there's the documentation online which will help you, but they won't give you the answer every time that you need. So I have also set up a testing environment. This is something I think could help many. I haven't published this yet on my GitHub. I usually publish everything open source on GitHub. I just haven't had time, but if you're interested, just ping me on LinkedIn or whatever, and I will help you get up and running with your testing environment. So Slush is my garbage where I just put stuff that I want to test. I'm just going to make sure I have the correct container ID here. Yes, I do. So when I go in here, I'll just change that to false first. This will send actually tracking code into my Matomo dashboard, to my tracker, so I can test properly. go to visit log, for example. So by default, Matomo will always use yesterday, but if we change for today, I can see, yeah, because I'm local, it will default my IP address to my local host. As you can see, I can see my what kind of things I'm running here. So the first thing you want to check, if you're using Tag Manager, for example, you have something called, this is, I already put it in development mode, but by default in production, it shouldn't be on only if you're debugging. So make sure that when you're on production, don't leave this on, because it will give other people who has knowledge about how to use Matomo to see your triggers and your code and stuff like that. So make sure you use it carefully. But when you enable debug, you can add, so I made a cheat sheet here for me. I can go here and you see that it will add to my URL a query parameter with Matomo preview mode and my container ID. So I get this neat little screen here where I can see my tags, if they're fired. And this is just, this fires right away, so that's cool. But if we want to add other triggers, you can see if they execute or not in here. We also have logs here for everything. This is kind of like basic stuff that you want to be aware of when you're working, especially with Tag Manager. That's kind of neat. Then, because I was helping an e-commerce site which had some kind of steps, and we were trying to figure out how the conversion attribution model works. So what I had to do was, because I didn't have access to production data, I had to replicate everything locally. The whole workflow, like if you come in from a campaign to a site, for example, you want to attribute the visit to the campaign and not the direct visit, because if someone comes in from my campaign, and as Alfonso was talking about in his previous talk, like sometimes users, they will go out from your website, maybe visit a different website, compare prices, and then when they come back, your site, you don't want it to be added to a direct visit for that, for that conversion. So I have to set up my tracking code similar to the client I was working with. So when you're working with e-commerce, you want to make sure you send in the things you need to update the customer journey, like if they add stuff to the cart, and when they finally convert, buy something. This is something I'm gonna put up on a repo soon. I haven't done it yet. And this is documented also, but sometimes it's, if you're not very used to JavaScript, it could be a lot to take in. I just simplified all the steps you need to do to track an e-commerce site. So you push your items into your cart, for example, get a total, and I'm just using some random numbers and prices just to make it more realistic. But it also makes it a little bit more difficult to debug. So I'm going to show you some tricks that I've learned that I use when I'm debugging. So, for example, if I know specifically add to cart, let's say, and I want to know when I'm using the preview, I can only see the triggers and the logs that Matomo shows me. But maybe I want to go even deeper. Maybe I want to see what's executed in Matomo in real life. So nowadays, you can, if you have your environment up and running locally, you can use, if you use VS Code as I do, probably you can use PHP Storm also. You can have Xdebug if you're familiar with Xdebug. You have it running locally. You can set breakpoints in your code. So I'm not sure which where we're gonna hit here, but let's say that just for this example, I will show you. I will just put a break here equals 0, and I can restart my debugger. And if I'll visit my page here, you see it will stop in my editor. So now I can see, I can step through all the steps that Matomo will do here. I can jump into a specific function if I want to. That's gonna be a very long presentation if I jump into all of the code. I'm just showing you that it's possible to step through everything. And if you suspect, like oftentimes you will suspect, okay, there's a problem with, let's see, we have maybe a plugin here, e-commerce, let's say, and you want to know if it's running the correct function. You can have a breakpoint somewhere around here. Let's restart that one. So add to cart. And now we break at index, but we don't want to do that. We want to go to our next breakpoint. You see it's working. Whenever you're on your local environment, it will take a little bit longer because I have all the debug settings configured. So it will generate more extensive, more verbose logs for me that I can analyze. But now you see we jump into our e-commerce plugin here, and then we can start step debugging here and see okay, what do we get in our request? Is it relevant for what we want? Is it working as it should? So this is kind of cool way to debug, which requires a little bit more knowledge, and you need to be familiar with the code, and so on and so on. And then another thing that's important to know is if you're working, let's say, you don't know where the data is going or coming, you have access to a database. Also, this is important that you do it locally and not on production, because it can generate kind of big logs and you don't want to kill your server or use up all the space. So first of all, we just need to want to have an editor. I recently changed the UI here. There we go. Let's find my cheat sheets. Just a second. So I need to. So what I'm interested in here in the database is the general log is off, which is normally what you want. But when you're debugging, you would like to set it to 1. Maybe I'm logged in with the wrong user. Let's see. Access denied. Let's because this is my local, I just think I'm using Matomocamp. Hopefully it's root. This is a new issue I bumped into the other day. I need to somehow allow public key to through. But we don't want to use SSL. Just enter. Finite setting. This is no bueno. Let's see if I have access here. Okay. I'll do it from terminal instead. Okay. Then we want to make sure that we log everything into a table. You could, of course, log into a file or whatever you prefer. And then we have access to, just a typo. And this can grow pretty big if you have it on. So let's just make sure that we truncate like so. Then we just want to turn off my debugging here. Just go to About Us. And this will run a series of queries to the database. Now we should have access the map. 78 rows. So if you want to have a prettier output, you can do \G and you will get a summary of all the queries that are run. This is why I want to use the dbeaver because I get a nicer view. What I could do is that I will give my user privileges to do what I want to do. And I haven't checked if there's any questions or anything. But if you do have any questions, just ask me. If there are any specific use case you're wondering about, I can help you.
There are no questions in the chat, actually.
Flash privileges. And then I should be able to, yes. As you can see here, so these were the commands I just ran from the terminal. But what's interesting, for every page view, well, I have development mode enabled now, but as you can see, there's 77 queries done to the database for a single page view. Like I just clicked About Us. Let me show you just one more time, so you can, so you believe me, so you don't think I'm making this up. I go to a thank you page, for example. Let me first show you, because I truncated everything, so this should be 0 now. So the only query that is showing is the query that I just ran. And I can, if I copy them, I will, yeah. Yeah, it will, dbeaver, my database application will add some comments here. Just it's easier to debug like that, as you can see. So I truncated the general log, and now if I go to the thank you page, example, And as I said, I'm running the preview thing here, and I'm development mode on. But now I can actually see all the queries that run in the background. 215 queries. And this is also because I added some complexity. When I go to the thank you page, I will also send in, I will do the conversion. So there's more requests to the database. That's normal. And another thing that I also built, mostly for myself, because I thought it was easier to debug, especially on the e-commerce side. Let's see, slash, and we have an environment here. We set it to true. So this is a work in progress. I will make it look better in the future, but now I have my own debugging here, so I can see my visitor ID, for example. I can see if I have the attribution cookie. I haven't logged in, so I don't have a user ID. What else? Easy steps to log in a user, so I will get a user ID, for example. Because that's also another bug that we discovered, was that if you come to a website from a campaign, let's say, and then at a later point, like let's say 2 hours later or the next day, you're a returning visitor, you come into the site and you add your items to the cart, and then when you go to checkout, there's, maybe not always, but in this specific use case that I had, they had to log in the user before they made the purchase, so that the user got a user ID. So I had to be able to debug that, and we found out a bug that if the conversion attribution model is not correctly attributing the campaign, because it will generate a new visitor ID, and Matomo had no way to know about the first visit. So yeah, so this is how I found out that bug, and you can probably follow the issue here. I don't know if they have resolved it yet. Conversion. Spelling is not the greatest. So, but they labeled it as a bug here. And if you go into this specific issue, you can also see I also attached all the logs that I got debugging, like all the SQL queries that was of interest, doing the same thing I showed you earlier. I got the correct SQL queries, and that way, because if some of the queries are not interesting, because they're like what Matomo does in the background to make sure like the configuration is right and all stuff like that. But then, of course, you do have some queries that are interesting. Maybe not this query per se, because this is when a user navigates through the it will update the Matomo log conversion here to the ED to the visit, and we have an ID, visitor ID, and stuff like that. But the interesting queries where you can discover some bugs are actually when you run the core archive. Let me just truncate again. So you don't want to spam. So we reset this, and then we will do a core archive, for example. Of course, we can also enable our step debugger if we want. If we want to step through all the things that Matomo is doing here in the background. Well, Matomo does a lot of things, so it's pretty intense to step through all the flow, the whole workflow. So for now, I will just keep it simple. And now we got, this is the core archive. Let's see how many. Generated 2,209 rows, which can be quite tough to debug when you're trying to find a needle in a haystack. But if you know what you're looking for, it gets easier over time. After you have done this a couple of times, you can see, for example, I will know that if there's a huge gap in between two sentences here, like select one, and then you see there's a huge gap here, and then comes from, I know that this is generated through PHP. Because otherwise you wouldn't have that big of a gap here. So then I know where to look in the code, for example. It's easier for me to debug. And I can see how the blobs are generated and inserted, and of course it's tougher when you have a big data set. Let's say you track millions of page views per month, then it will, your database will grow exponentially. It will be not impossible, but you need to have better machines or servers to save the logs and go through them and analyze them. So there's also other log analyzing tools. I can't remember mine. I call something. It's a Python. Cannot remember the name right now. Somewhere in the back of my mind. It's for importing server logs. Python database log. So, no, not that one. Oh, can't remember the name. But that's, so when you have bigger data sets, I would recommend to use a log analyzer, and it can figure out how much time a specific query will run on your server. And this is real case scenarios that I have had to debug Matomo in large data sets. We had a redundant database with over 1 terabyte data in each So huge data sets, but this Python MySQL log analyzer tool was really helpful to troubleshoot the issue we were having at the time. I can't remember the name. It's a bummer. I think it's a pretty simple name, Python DB analyzer or something. That's good. Maybe. Could be this one. So that will give you hints on where to look for issues in your code or in the Matomo. And if you're building your own plugins, maybe you want to know if you have any bugs, specifically for large data sets. And what else have I not covered here? And yeah, of course, you have some default Matomo log things. It's always helpful. Yeah, I haven't enabled it, but you can, if you go into global, you can find log writer screen, and you can change this to database or file. And you can have different. You can change this to debugging, for example. Let's see. There's no log. Great. Let me just add it. File. Debug. Then we need to specify where we want to output the log. Log temp Matomo, yeah, that will work for this. And if we just refresh here, it should generate a log. Common logs here. And as you can see, we have some debug information here. Also, if you're running your core archive on a server and you're suspecting you have some issues, you can always add verbose and even more verbose, just triple these, and then you get a more extensive output. And if you're developing a plugin or something and you want to know, you can always use the logger feature. It's been a long time since I've done this, but you have a logger interface, static container, so you can log code. This is quite useful actually when you're debugging. You have different levels also. You can have info, and that will show up in your when you're running a core archive. You will see this output, for example, and then I can just run it from the grep for whatever log I want to see. It's not running this right now, but you get the picture, I hope. There's one more thing I wanted to mention before we end this. Yeah, there's other log analyzing tools also, of course, it's worth mentioning. You can use like so if you're running on cloud, you might maybe use telemetry data with Prometheus. You can use Kibana or Elk Stack, Elasticsearch, or you can use Grafana and Loki. Those are good tools. But there's also one, Naugus. This is for everyone who's been in the IT for a long time knows about Naugus. Graylog, yeah, Graylog is open source. It's a neat tool to use. There's one specific that I was thinking about. Logstash. Oh, can't remember the name right now. Well, I think that will wrap this up. If there's no questions.
Oh, actually, no, still no questions in the chat. So if you're done, I think
What about you, Ronan? Do you have any questions? Are you familiar with debugging like this?
I'm not debugging like this. I have like basic tool right in my IDE. So I've never met that kind of bug too. So I slightly don't have to go in the database as you do. So I have customers that have issues in the database, like missing columns in the conventional log tables, so that we have to regenerate that columns, but not strange issue, no. Okay, so I will stop the recording. Cool, thank you. And I guess you will still be able to answer further questions in the chat.
Yeah,
if you want.
So
I saw that you have an account. Okay.
Okay.
And Enzo just stopped the stream, so we are just together. Okay, so thank you for your talks.
Dan Banks, I'm here to talk to you today about how I worked with ChatGPT to really figure out how to access the live raw data within Matomo. And there was a couple of reasons why I did that. And one of them was Matomo offers fantastic dashboards and reporting tools, but sometimes you just want to, excuse me, sometimes you really just want to be able to get to the live data. And I am not a programmer, and I didn't want to really engage with any programmers on this. So I wanted to see if there was a way that I could create a simple program to give me that information. And so for the next several minutes, what I'm going to do is walk you through that conversation and provide you with a real-time use case of working with ChatGPT to get me to a particular point. And what's really interesting about this is the journey doesn't end, right? It's never ending. So every day I find a way to improve the process and improve the ability to actually get to the data. So be it whether it's adding prompts to make it easier for me, or whether it's addressing a different way to ingest the data, whether it's, CSV or JSON, what have you. And then on the other side of this presentation, I'm going to talk about a tool that I came across in trying to identify a way to view my data differently. And what I mean by that is I work with a lot of wholesale distributors, and I have over the last 20 plus years, in identifying what their needs are from a software standpoint, right? And one of the challenges that every one of them come across is, how do I look at my data, right? Well, there's BI tools, there's analytics tools, there's certainly availability out there. Well, when COVID hit, there was a mass rush to build these websites. And many of these people have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to create a digital or online experience for their users, for their customers. The challenge being there's a disconnect between what's happening online and what's happening offline. Now, certainly there are ways to connect to ERPs to drive sales into the ERP, read customer data, what have you. But what you're really missing is how the customer is interacting online, but not necessarily purchasing, not necessarily buying from you. So my goal as I'm looking at this is, one, Matomo provides the unique experience, I would say, of being able to track kind of that authenticated user, right? That logged in user, that customer, and what they're doing. And the opportunity here, as I'm trying to build, is identify a way to merge the data, right? Map the data together. So the tool I'm going to show you is how I'm going about that journey. It's something called Nomic Atlas. Nomic is a company out of New York that has built a couple different things. They've built something called ChatGPT for All, which is actually a downloadable GPT that for your desktop. So you're able to actually point it to directories within your within your own local environment and have your own AI chatbot. So there's that. But on top of that, besides that, they built this thing called Atlas. And I'm going to talk about Atlas with you. And I've actually built a throughput of bringing the data down from Matomo, translating it into a way that Atlas ingests it. And then we're going to talk about how that is viewable. So before we begin, I want to apologize for being late. Unfortunately, I live on the East Coast and we go through something called daylight savings time. I can't wait till they end it. But in my mind, this was happening at 11 a.m. But because of daylight savings time, this is what occurred. So I apologize. And I hope we have fun on this trip today as we go through this. I'm actually going to walk you through a conversation I had with ChatGPT and how it started. So if there's any questions to start, are they asking live or are we chatting those questions, Rowan and Enzo?
They are asking. There is no question in the chat, but if there is question, I will tell you and I will put them in the big blue button chat.
Great. About how many people do we have joining with us today?
Oh, I don't have the value. You may ask Ronan Chardonnay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to make sure that we can all see the presentation. Can everyone see this?
Sorry, I think you can continue your talk.
You're able to see the presentation?
Yes, for sure.
All right, perfect. So as we look at this, I started off a conversation very simply. Build an API call to access data from Matomo. Now, certainly that exists right within the API documentation. There's some tools out there that you can use to build this, but I wanted to be able to run this locally on my machine, and I wanted to be able to make changes to it as I needed. So the conversation started off very simply building an API call to access data from Matomo. This is the actual prompt I used. So this is what really came back from ChatGPT. It came back with a couple answers, but at the end of that answer, what it said was, would you like a code example on how to make the API call using Python? Now, Python is a programming language that really ChatGPT understands very well. And it also is able to provide very simple script in Python. So Python is a downloadable program that you can get access to very easily. You can download it to your desktop and you can set up an environment. And it's not hard at all to do this. It's very straightforward. And I'm happy to post this presentation. If anyone reaches out via email or via conversation, we can certainly walk you through how to do that, making it simple. But the idea again here was, how do I do this? I'm not a programmer. Provide me with a way to do that. So I went through and had this conversation, and it's kicked off with just a quick, this is how you do it. Import the requests, and this is a standard format of the Matomo API. Now, what was very interesting was it had within its data set, its understanding, right? Its training, exactly what I was asking. So it knew when I said build something API call from Matomo, it went and it understood exactly what structure it would need. Well, Now I said, well, that's great. We've actually built it. Now I want to do something with it, right? I don't want to just make a data call. I want to export it to a CSV file. And so very straightforward. It now said, well, make these adjustments to your code. And within this presentation, and I will share this presentation, I'm showing the code because it's very straightforward. And if you are able to code and you understand that, you'll see that there's some changes you can easily make by yourself to address and change what you're looking to do. But again, I want to stress I'm not a programmer. So we continued this conversation. And of course, with every type of program, every type of coding, there's an error. And so if you're currently working with ChatGPT to build any code or any AI tool, I encourage you, as I did here, to simply take the error and drop it in or copy and paste it directly into the conversation, because it's going to review that and understand what the challenge is. And so it simply came back and it said, here's updated code to fix that. And again, the conversation continues to, what am I looking to achieve, right? And so again, there's an error. So you're going to get errors. You're going to come back and forth and get these errors. And the reality is it's going to be a little bit frustrating at times as you go through this process, but it gives you the opportunity to understand the programming as it's getting put back to you, especially if you're not a programmer. So it said it sees the issue. It says needs to create a file on my desktop, adjust the path accordingly. So it says, okay, create this code, drop this right onto your desktop. So now I said, well, now that we've gotten that straight away, now that we've gotten that figured out, what I want to now do is I want to take a specific API and I want to include that and download it into a CSV so that I can review that data the way I want to see it. So now it came back and it gave me exactly what I was looking for from a standpoint of what the parameters were and what the information is. And it left, the information that was important to me, such as, the auth token, the private stuff, where I would put that in, because you don't want to share that as you're going through this process. You don't want to share any specific information regarding this. As I go through this, now I'm saying, well, you didn't put it in the CSV file, so I would still like the data in a CSV file. And I'm showing you this actual conversation because I think that the reality is, if you are clear in your expectations when you're developing this, when you're working with ChatGPT on these type of things, it really does understand and work with you to present you with what you're looking for. So it came back and it gave me a full program to continue down the path of what we want to include from the name of the CSV file. You can call this function with the action type authentication token. So it provided me with a way to go ahead and build and develop this program. So I want to stop here for a minute and just kind of give you a live demonstration of exactly what I'm talking about here. We'll get to Nomic next, but what I really want to show you is this in live production and show you how I've now taken this conversation, which started out with a very simple statement: build me an API call to Matomo, and what I've been able to do continually. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a minute and I'll be able to share that again. Just going to pull up my program here and see if there's any conversations, any questions at this point.
No, there is no questions actually.
Okay, perfect. All right. So now you see my command prompt, right?
Yes, we can see your command prompt.
Okay. So the first thing is I want to get access to, so I'm going to run a program that I wrote called Matomo, and it's in Python, and this is just on my command prompt. So again, I'm not in any type of coding interface. I'm just using my standard Windows command prompt. And it comes back to me and says, do I want it in CSV or JSON format? And I'm going to say I want it in JSON. And what are my dates? I'm going to put it in the date value. I'm going to enter my domain. And I just need to grab my token, and I don't care if you hit this token. I'll change it after this presentation. And so what we have here is data written to visitor details .json, right? Now, if I want that to be instead, I want that to be CSV. So dropped it into a CSV file, just like that. And so, stop sharing again here real quick. With me, I just want you to see what I was doing per se here. And again, I apologize for not being fully prepared based on the timing. Okay, so the actual API I was going after was the search, exit after search, and you'll see it dropped it right into the CSV. So in doing this, this is great, right? I have a script behind this, very straightforward in a text format. And I would have to go back and change that, right? Back and forth if I want to change the API. So I wanted to make this a better user experience for myself. So what I did instead was I took what I did was I made my experience better for myself. And I said, okay, now we're going to instead I'm going to say that I want to get the live data, and the call I want to use site ID. And by the way, now what I've done is I've also put my site token and the URL is in a separate file now, so it reads that. So we went from having a simple conversation from build a Matomo API call to now I'm actually creating a program that allows me to interact with it as a user in the way that I want to get to the data. And it's going to take a second to do that. So while it's building that JSON file, because it's getting 10,000 records, we're going to talk about Nomic for a minute. So Nomic is a tool that allows you to visualize your data differently. So as we think about the dashboards and all that great information that provides, Nomic is a way to take unstructured data and actually make some decisions about it using artificial intelligence. So it uses certain algorithms to determine, based on the way that words are grouped together. The very technical term is called embedding, and it uses a way to identify how to create relationships, data within its training model. So if I think about what Atlas really is it's an enterprise ML data platform. And just to be clear, I'm not a sales rep for these guys, any kind of referral fee. I just found this. I've talked to them, identify kind of some of the use cases I'm talking about. I'm excited about what they're working on. This is fairly new in the case that I'm presenting to them. But the idea here is being able to create, curate, visualize, and interpret data at scale. So depending on who's on the call with us, you may have some you may be working with some very large data sets and wanting to figure out how to visualize certain data points within that. This would be an excellent tool to take a look at and see if it meets your needs on that. So really, data is unstructured, hidden. There's really not a really good way to organize and extract value from unstructured data sets, such as conversations, right? If you think about if you have a type of situation where there's a chatbot, right, from your website, and there's a lot of chats that are going back and forth. Well, that's kind of unstructured data, right? There's a lot of hidden meaning and information within that. There's also the idea of looking at potentially video and audio if you work within those industries, and being able to get to that data in a quicker, more efficient manner, right? It's very slow right now within the data realm. And there's really not a good training model for that. It causes poor performance out of the box. So what this allows you to do is ingest unstructured data from all different kinds of databases and different kinds of files. And I know this looks all very technical, and we may have some very technical people on the phone with us, but the reality is I figured out how to use this, and I figured out how to build a structure of the data to view in different ways. So the reality is anyone can do this. It's not difficult. It uses standard applications to move the data back and forth. You can build applications on top of it, calling the data. So any type of search tool that you might want to utilize when accessing the data, you can do so via API. So there's a lot of potential here, and I'll share the link in the presentation that I share. But the idea here was I wanted to see my data differently than what currently exists within the Matomo platform. So if we go back to my files here, all right, we'll see it got written to the JSON file. So now what I've done is there's another Python program that I have that allows me to now write it to the Nomic platform. And I'm going to show you what this looks like actually in that platform. So it's asking me for what the name of my JSON file is, what I want to call this. It gives me a list of all the indexable fields. So I like action details, has a lot of good information in there. I'm going to pop this on, and I'm going to tell Atlas to build what's called a topic model. So it's going to take that unstructured data that sits within that action details, because there's a lot of information in there, and it's going to decide and make decisions based on that. So while that's running, you'll see here that it's uploading the text to Atlas. All right, so now we have a map that's been created. So let's go look at that map. All right, so here is an example of my data set. So the one thing is I've built a lot of different ones. You can play and do some interesting things in here. But here's one which is based on the exits that happened, right? So if I go look at this, I have my data preview, I have my mapping, and it's showing me all that information. But if I open this map, I told it to build kind of its own understanding of my data. And so very quickly, I can see which pages my customers are exiting from, or what's the subject matter potentially of the page that they're exiting from. And what's cool about this is I can drill down into a particular set of data. So I can say, just show me the returns. And so here's all the returns. And as I hover over these, you'll see now the data on the side come up. And these are all the different data points that we pulled in from that JSON. And so how to return an item is the label here. And it understood from feeding it how to, I would say, label or give a topic to that data. Now, the one thing I will say is sometimes it makes decisions based on its data set that doesn't necessarily give you exactly what you're looking for. So one of the things that they're building is the ability to kind of label your own data and build your own kind of topic based on how you want it to appear. But the reality here is very quickly I can see across the board where my customers are exiting my site. And it's interactive. I can drill down into it. I can really get an understanding of where they were in their journey when they exited. So there is that capability. In addition to that, and I pulled this in a little while ago, this live data. And so we now have a very large map with 10,000 plus pieces to it. And so what I said here was I wanted to understand what the actions were, what they were taking, what they were viewing on the site during that month. And so it took all this unstructured data and it made some decisions about it. It said, well, there's a lot of individuals who were focused on island hunting. And I can come in here and I can say, all right, well, show me, which pages they were actually looking at and what are the actions that they took. How many actions did they take? What was the browser? So here's all that excellent data that Matomo has that you can now take using, that API call, ingest it into Atlas. And what's really interesting about Atlas is you can have your public data, these can be public maps, or you can have your own private maps. And, they charge a very nominal fee for that. But if you want to take your private data and put it to here and just look at it differently. And you'll notice as I was running through that program, it asked me some questions. What was my index field? So I can tell it which field I want to look at instead. Maybe it wasn't action details, maybe index and look at specifically my campaigns or my device types. And so you can build all different kinds of maps. And I've found this to be very interesting. I've actually been working with one of my customers to view their customers and their search history and capabilities. So here's the data that we just dumped in. Took a few minutes to build, but 10,000 records pretty quickly. And I told it to index on action details from a different time period from the other previous data. So I encourage you to take a look at Atlas Nomic, .ai I encourage you to reach out to me. I can walk you through how to build these particular programs using the conversations I've had with ChatGPT, the scripts. I have a few different things there. But really the idea here is, how do you get to your data through a simple program, and then what you can do with that data, right? Once you have it in JSV, you can ingest it into any of your BI platforms if you're using Tableau, or if you're using your Power BI or others. And so I know we're be about maybe 5 or 10 minutes early here. I want any questions. But my goal was to show you in a working way, a very non-presentation kind of way, just, hey, this is how I use this. This is a way that Matomo can give you more. Okay, any coming across the chat?
There are no questions actually. Let me check. No question.
Okay. Well, I hope this was something that you can take back and find some value in. I will provide my presentation to the Matomo crew so they can share it. And links, it'll include some additional information as well. But I really do encourage you to take a look at this particular tool. I think it's definitely something from a visual standpoint and a simplicity standpoint, gives you to identify key data points, see how they relate to each other, understand the, I guess I would say the overall effect a particular data point has on another. So. All right.
There is a question. Do you have any repo you can share with simple examples? It's a question by George.
Yeah, a report with simple examples. What kind of data would you like to see in that? So one of the ones that I think would be what I would say would be a simple example, and I did go through it rather quickly, but might be being able to pull the details of the search exits. So here's an example of the segments, the exits. So this is the data that tells you the exit rate per page. Would that be what you were talking about, George, or were you looking for something a little bit different? Another way to possibly view the data this way. One of the actions that occur. So instead of we look at this one, let's look at another map I've Matomo here. And so this was all based on custom variables. Do any of you within your Matomo platform use custom variables? That's a way to think about how you might look at your data is based on all the different variables that you've put out there. So I pulled that in from the live visitor details. That's part of the actual data set. Details driven. Or I told it, in this case, I told it to point at the custom variables to show me this information. So in the way that I pulled that data, we'll give you an example of the export of how that looked. Show you exactly what I mean by that. Give you a sense of what I viewed here. So here's an example of the JSON file that you can pull in. All right, so this is the JSON being downloaded or being pulled in. So this is an actual website that gives you that information. So there's a lot of opportunity to work with your data from Matomo in different ways. Code implementation in GitHub. Okay, so I haven't done anything in GitHub for this. I literally am running this on my local machine. I haven't put it out to any other place yet. I've been working on this, but when I shared it with Ronan, it was interesting because there wasn't a lot of functionality out there that was, I guess, simple to use from an API standpoint that allowed you to just put the data in the CSV and other types of files. So this was a use case I had, and I have been working with Matomo for several years, and I found this to be something that I thought would be useful for others. But no GitHub. But if you would like to connect and we could work to get something into GitHub, happy to do it. Any other questions?
No more questions, actually. If you guys have some question, you can ask to Dan. And
well, I hope this provides some value and it was interesting to everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much to be here. That was very interesting.
And like I said, I'll share my slides. And it will include a number of the URLs. I'll also include my contact information. So.
Okay, perfect. So I will stop the record and the stream.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much to be here, and I will cut the live.
Do you think that went well?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.